So this is a video about competitive Pokemon's biggest noob traps. Noob traps are Pokemon that noobs see, assume they're good, and use them, even when they're not any good. I really don't know how to start this video, so let's get into it. Also, none of these will be in any particular order. We'll start with probably the most notable current noob trap, Iron Treads. Even when Pokemon Home released and Cosmons like Skeleturge and Meowscarada drop, Iron Treads stayed. Now, what sucks so hard about Iron Treads? It's just way worse than Great Tusk and everything. It's got worse coverage, it's got worse stats, doesn't even have close combat stab. Sure, it has extra speed, but that barely matters. Also, is it just me, or does Iron Treads look kind of like a bug? Unfortunately, I don't know nearly enough about the Scarlet and Violet OU metagame to talk about Iron Tread's strengths and weaknesses for any longer. Let's get to a metagame I know a bit more about. Machamp in Gen 1. So, you know how the two best typings in RBY are Normal and Psychic? Well, many newer players see the big three of RBY being three normal types and go, "Wow, what fools. I'll hit them with a submission from my Machamp. They'll never see it coming." But then their opponent just like switches into a Psychic type, and then you realize, oh yeah, Machamp kinda sucks big balls. Sure, Machamp can do some low kick flinching if the opponent's Pokemon are mostly paralyzed, which actually landed a spot on the viability rankings, but Machamp's most common use is for people to think it's good against the big three when there are Psychic types, at least one, on like every team. Next up, we're driving on down to National Dex Uber's country. I'm not talking about a fan favorite like Garchomp, Dragonite, Greninja, Gengar, Aegislash-Pikachu, etc, 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 etc. I'm talking about a Pokemon that's used a lot even in high ladder, and I don't get why, because Lugia is not good, but people still use it for some reason. Lugia's main function is stall, but it's not even good at that. It runs into a bit of a dilemma with its ability multi-scale. Should it run leftovers for that sweet, juicy extra recovery, but risk multi-scale breaking? Or should it run boots so multi-scale doesn't break, but not give it any leftovers recovery? Neither of these are really good options. Its typing also stinks, with many weaknesses to common typings. It also becomes even more doo-doo when it gets hit with a status condition, which is either guaranteed to break its multi-scale, or make it slower, neither of which is good for it. All in all, just use like Ho-Oh. I don't know why Lugia, a Pokemon that could arguably be balanced in OU, is used less even with 1630 weighted stats than Arceus Fairy, Giratina Origin, Arceus Dark, Palkia Origin, Smeargle, Zekrom, etc, etc. Like seriously, what draws so many people to Lugia? What's so enticing about it? Why do people like it? Now, you might notice if you select Gen 4 OU on the team builder, a bunch of Pokemon show up as OU by technicality. Pretty much all these were noob traps back in the olden days where you had to play Pokemon on stone tablets and record the damage calcs with abacuses, but the main one I want to focus on is Electivire. It's shit for one main reason. It's a physical electric type. Pretty much any physical electric type is destined to be dog turd because there are no good physical electric moves with a good distribution. Game Freak just felt like being evil when they decided to make Wild Charge a recoil move, and I genuinely cannot think of any other reason why Wild Charge is a recoil. Electivire was used a lot because of new toy syndrome, which means that since he was a cool new Pokemon, everyone started using him because he's a cool new Pokemon. Then he landed in OU because a lot of people used him. People started using him because he was in OU. He just got stuck in a feedback loop of being trash, not being able to be used to its full potential. Next up, we have Uber's biggest noob trap, and this is an item Pokemon combo. It's actually by far the most used item on that Pokemon, despite being completely and utterly dog-ass on it. I'm talking about Focus Sash Marshadow. I think the main logic for people who put their Sash on their Marsh is that since Marshadow is Spectral Thief, the opponent attacks with a Shadow Sweeper, and Marshadow's Sash activates and revenge kills. That's at least how it goes in theory, but in practice Marshadow's just not doing enough without a band or a Life Orb. And also, just like, use Ditto! I don't get what Sash Marshadow does that Ditto can't do better. If all this didn't convince you, there's one more thing stopping Sash Marshadow in his tracks. That's right, the Sneaky Stones, the Private Pebbles, the Clandestine Cobblestones. Stealth Rock completely destroys any potential of Sash Marshadow sweeping, and since entry hazards are super ubiquitous, Sash Marshadow's Sash is broken most games, and ends up becoming useless. Up next, we have a Pokemon that consistently ends up in tiers it's not good in. Every generation since Gen 4, it's been stuck in a tier that's power levels too high for it. Gen 5 RU, B tier. Gen 6 RU, D- tier, a tier specifically made for it because it was that bad. Gen 7 NU, C tier. and Gen 9 RU C+ tier. I'm talking about Typhlosion, a Pokemon that people should just stop using because it's not good. The main reasons why it isn't good are because its main use as an eruption sweeper is kinda iffy because of the fact that it's a fire type, and as you might notice, fire is weak to rock. If you give him heavy duty boots, he won't be that fast, which means he's way worse as an eruption sweeper. This is the curse of being a popular Pokemon. People just cram you into tiers that you aren't any good in. I don't really know how to segue into this one, so Mega Beedrill. It's currently stuck in National X UU and probably will remain stuck there. And I completely understand why a lot of noobs gravitate to this guy. 150 attack, 145 speed, adaptability. At first this guy seemed like it could be an anything goes threat, but unfortunately it's a bug poison type, the two worst defensive types in the game. It has nothing to affect steel, ghost, or poison types. Its best stab moves aren't even that good. X-Scissor and Poison Jab are just okay, and Knockoff, Pursuit, and U-Turn are its only other good attacks. What also doesn't help is that it can't hold an item, so it's time for the Malicious Minerals to make it stinky for him. Mega Beedrill also suffers from non-existent defense stats along with its awful typing, so it's a big poo. Next up is Regieleki, and I'm not talking about Gen 9 Regieleki where it got Terra and was banned in like a second. I'm talking about Gen 8 Regieleki. Regieleki was OU for a surprising amount of time despite sucking. And noobs saw that it's the fastest Pokemon in the game and has the ability to boost electric type attacks, so it's like a free choice specs, so they decided to give it specs plus Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, Landorus, Therian, and other ground types. Regieleki's only non-normal coverage moves are Ancient Power, Acrobatics, Assurance, Bounce. That's it. I'm not exaggerating, that's it. However, Regieleki isn't all bad. It can be a pretty good lead with dual screens, rapid spin, and explosion, but unfortunately that's not what most people use it for. And finally, we have Fear. Fear stands for fucking evil annoying rat, but it's really only fucking evil and annoying if you're really bad at the game. It's a strat that involves Focus Sash, Endeavor, and Quick Attack. The main user is Rattata, that's why it's Rat, but it's also common on Aeron, Togedemaru, Sawk, Halo, and many more. Instead of explaining in depth why it sucks, I'll just list a bunch of things that it loses to. Status conditions, priority, ghost types, multi-hit moves, hazards, Rocky Helmet. Sure, some of these have adapted to these changes, but they're still not good. And most of all, the best thing that can stop a Fear sweep, being good at the game. Despite Fear being a complete garbage gimmick, it still populates Uber's low ladder, and it's mostly due to fake Showdown Salt YouTubers. So that's a couple of notable noob traps in competitive Pokemon. Like the video, comment on how great it was, comment on how I am so cool, comment on how I am the best. Bye.
Money, 100 mouth, bitch, we play around.